This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation. This is the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show, powered by Violent Money. You can check out Violent Money's YouTube channel, Violent Money TV, and of course, check out their website, violentmoney.co.uk, for all their latest apparel and clothing, training equipment, all that good stuff. And of course, please do check out the Violent Money Academy on social media, the first smart gym in the UK. But today's show is sponsored by Heights. Heights is the world's number one brain care brand. What is brain care? Brain care is when you care for your brain. It doesn't get much simpler than that. It means caring for something that has been caring for you secretly since the minute you were born, your brain. It's movement, it's all its actions, behaviors that will set you up to live a life on your terms. Good nutrition, switching off, sleeping deeply, moving your body and staying curious is where it begins. Good brain care habits affect more than your brain. They have a knock-on effect and benefits in your life, well-being, mental health, and of course, physical health. And we want to show people all the ways they can practice brain care and how they're already doing it. It isn't a one-off thing. Forming habits and routines which incorporate brain care is essential to help your brain thrive every single day. Can't focus, always tired, feeling up, then down. The Smart Supplement's top-rated formula of 20 key vitamins and minerals, including vitamins D, C, B12, blueberries, omega-3 targets everything from poor sleep to brain fog, stress, so you feel better every single day. The Smart Supplement combines the 20 highest quality nutrients for the brain, better brain health and mental health well-being now and for the future. 2 capsules a day containing ingredients that are proven to improve sleep, energy, sharpen focus and memory, boost mood and help to manage stress. You probably already invest a lot of time and energy in your skin care, your hair care, your health care. But what about your brain care? Why prioritize what's on your head over what's inside? Go to yourheights.com now to start your brain care journey and today. And guess what? You can use the promo code ACE Nation and get 10% off your first subscription order. That's yourheights.com. Use the promo code ACE Nation. Get yourself 10% off. Your future will thank you. And I can also say, very honestly, that I've been using these now for about 2 weeks, and I feel a lot better. I feel a lot more with it, and just generally a bit fresher. So I can, if that continues, I'll be a happy boy. But enough with the housekeeping, as it were. Of course, if you prefer your podcast in audio form, this show and all the other shows that are available for us and that we produce, available at the Sports Social Podcast Network. So please do check them out as well. But with no further ado, as you can see, Danny Batten's not with us at the moment. He's been delayed coming back from Poland. So hoping he's going to join us a bit later in the show if he's back in time. but we'll see how we go. But the show must go on, and I am delighted to say that just 6 days before his world title bout, we have a returning guest, none other than UFC veteran and, of course, Cage Warriors welterweight, Mr. Rhys McKee. How are you, my friend?
Yes, I'm very good. Always a pleasure to go on. I think this is maybe our hat-trick show, maybe the third time we've chatted. So, yeah, it's nice to have this one close to the fight.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I think you're right. I think it is the third one, and I think obviously one of those shows we had a really good chat about your time in the UFC, and you were really honest. Some would say brutally honest, maybe, but I think it is where it is, isn't it? Like, you spoke honestly about your experience and what had happened. You must be. I know the last time we spoke to you, you were absolutely like itching to get back to it. And kind of, my memory's not always the best, but it's getting better because of heights, don't forget. But I'm pretty sure that you said last time, I think you hinted that it was going to be Cage Warriors at that point, but didn't quite confirm, I think. But obviously, since then, you fought in Cage Warriors, impressively winning. And now you're into a title bout and literally 6 days away. How excited are you? One, to be, in the title picture, back on top, as it were, but also back fighting.
Yeah, I think when we spoke last, I think it was at a time where I kind of knew I was probably going to Cage Warriors again. We spoke with other shows and we kind of just seen what was out there, and none of it was that appealing in terms of a future aspect. So, yeah, and then we had the conversation with Cage Warriors. I have a really good relationship with Ian and obviously Graham's my manager. So we spoke really, really honest at what I wanted, what he wanted, and I was very keen to get things moving and be at the top of the division. So to be 6 days out from a world title fight, like, I wouldn't say I'm surprised, because I knew this would happen if the results could match, and my last performance definitely matched.
Yeah, absolutely. It was about as impressive as you could be in terms of your return to the promotion. Was there anything which you would have liked to have done different in that fight, or did it pretty much go as perfectly as it could be?
Yeah, I think of course I'm going to say this, but I think in hindsight, I think I could have finished it earlier, but I was having so much fun showing the kind of the style of fighter that I actually really enjoy to be. Sometimes I can come out a different style of fighter. Like the fight against Morano, I fought not who I am. Like, that's not my style. My style is what I was against Mantakivi, a patient pressure fighter, not someone that looks for one shot, one kills all the time. When they come, they come. But it's not a case of me looking for that. So I think I was having that much fun fighting how I plan and want to fight all the time that I just enjoyed it. And, Mantakivi was very tough, and it was nice to get 13 minutes in there against him, and just really get a lot of cage craft in there.
Was that? Do you think the Moreno fight in particular, but was that like born out of a bit of frustration at what had happened, what had gone on previously, or was it just one of them days?
Yeah, I think it was just one of them days. I wasn't frustrated. I wasn't nervous. It wasn't the big night. It wasn't, I can't lose 2 in a row. It was none of that. It was just from the minute the fight started, I was just different. When like everything in the lead up was so different to the performance. So it's confusing. I think Morano is a very smart fighter. He's definitely the highest fight IQ fighter I've ever shared a cage with. That being said, I took a lot from that fight. Like, I learned so much from that fight. I can't even begin to fathom how much I learned. So yeah, it was just a bad night.
Yeah. So I don't want to kind of go over your experiences in the UFC, because obviously we discussed that before, and people can go back and look at that if they want to hear your takes on it and stuff. But one thing I did want to kind of ask about it was I hear a lot of people, and I talk about it a lot as well on some of the other different shows that I've done or do, is that you learn more from defeats and bad days than you do from those successful days and those sort of, the highs, if you like. Look, when you look back now with a bit more hindsight, what do you think you learned from your stint in the UFC?
Like, like I learned a lot of positives. I learned more about myself. Like, am I really what I say I am, which is a fighter? And, yes, I am. I'll fight anyone at any time. And I learned, sometimes when I needed to cool down, I couldn't do it as much, but I've learned that skill since. So I learned a lot about myself. But I think if I was to really wrap it up into one sentence, it would be that, like, I belong there, even though the performances didn't match. How much none of it fazed me, or how much none of it threw me. I didn't meet people. When I met people, I was never like, wow, there's such and such. It was very
Yeah.
normal for me. So I know I belong there, and I know I'll be back there. And when I am, it'll be the exact same. It was just performance based. So I learned what I did learn is that is where I will end up again.
Yeah, and I think, like we discussed before, they very, very much threw you in at the deep end on a bit of short notice as well. So I think, it wasn't necessarily maybe the best, what's the word, like the best setting for you to make your debut with the promotion, maybe, just looking at it from the outside. But obviously, that's gone now. You've learned, like you say, those different things about yourself. And I think, you come out of that, any type of situation which hasn't gone your way, you come out of it as the time passes afterwards with a bit more maturity, learning a bit more about yourself, and obviously it gives you that experience for if you come up against, say, next week, some tough times against your opponent, Justin Burlington. If you get into a situation where it might be tough during that fight, it's going to be a very tough fight for the title. So do you feel like you'll be better equipped mentally because of some of the other things that have gone by over the last couple of years? Or do you think?
No, I do. Like, from day one of my career, I've had a lot of challenges, but especially them two UFC ones, where we're literally talking about hundreds of thousands of people watching it live. We're talking about millions of people watching it. Especially the Kamzat one at the time. Like, it's very hard to, like, and all fighters will say it, but like I'm not a breakable person. Like, in them scenarios, like especially the Kamzat fight, there was times where most people would have folded, and although he done what he wanted, there was never a chance I was like, I never gave up. I never will give up. So in this fight or any fight, I'm there to the death, and you know, I'm a nightmare fight for anyone. I know that, and that's due to being relentless.
Yeah, I mean, with that Kamzat fight as well, I think obviously you can look at what he's gone on and done since, but also, like you said, at no point did you look like he had broken you mentally or physically. It was a dominant performance. Don't get me wrong, but like you say, he didn't break you. In terms of your fight next week, mate, like, how do you feel about the camp and just the general build up of it? Rather, not necessarily the fight itself yet, but just the build up so far.
And like, it's been, what it's been a lot of hard work. It's been 14, 15 weeks of solid hard work, continuous work. But it's one of them ones, because Belfast has been attached. I haven't dreaded one session. I haven't dreaded one day. I never said, oh, maybe I'll take tonight off, and that's just not an option. That the whole is literally like a kid in Christmas, and it's just coming up every night, every day. It's getting closer. So it's been the nicest fight camp I had, although it's been the hardest. But because it's in Belfast, it's just got this special shine to it where nothing can really annoy you. Even as the weight is starting to come down, and I would normally be a bit grumpier, like, you've got the golden line of, this is in Belfast.
So, are you from Belfast, or are you from sort of close by?
I'm from like a town that's 25 minutes from Belfast. But
so it's like a proper hometown.
Yeah,
thing
Belfast.
For you.
Yeah, Belfast is our local arena. It's if we went to any concert as a kid, we went to this arena. It wasn't like, this isn't one of five. This is one of one. So
Yeah.
It's tremendous when people say, people will talk to you all the time. They'll be like, where are you fighting? And you'll say Belfast, and they're like, oh, whereabouts? And you'll say, oh, the SSE Arena, and they'll, their eyes light up. It's like, wow. So
That's the one in the local area. Like that's the this kind of special arena.
Yeah.
Everywhere's got one, haven't they? Where they go for concerts and fights and stuff. So did you get offered the fight and the venue was set at the same time, or did you kind of get offered the fight and then they set the date? And I'm interested.
It was date and venue first. And then from there, Justin fought Skiba, and I very much had an eye on that fight because I believed, Skiba done a post before. I think he said he wanted to fight, and so I had my eye on him. I never heard of him, but I knew he was a good fighter. So I watched his fight because he won. I thought we would fight, and at the same time as Justin won, I thought we would fight. So I watched that fight. That was done. I texted Ian Dean on the Sunday morning after I seen Justin called me out and said, right, this is it, let's do it. And then I think by the Wednesday or Thursday it was signed, and by the Friday it was released. Something like
Beautiful.
that.
So it was not a long process by the sounds of it in terms of getting it all tied up.
No.
Like I've seen some little bits on some social media, like, just sort of promotional images and stuff like this. Seems like you and Justin, you get on relatively well. You got a bit of respect for each other. Do you know each other well, or is it just like a mutual respect?
No, I don't. Like that's the first time we met. So we met in Belfast the other week. I think when a fight's of this magnitude of two high level fighters, like it's hard to I don't dislike any of my opponents. We're both young guys. We're striving for the same thing. Regardless of how we act, if we could have stood in Belfast and been angry with each other and had a whole drama and maybe genuinely disliked each other. Come the 25th of June, we're going to get in the cage. The door's going to lock, and we're going to fight like madmen anyway. So it doesn't matter, regardless of how we act. We're that professional and that high level that we're going to fight anyway. So, you know what? Like I don't mind if opponents want to be nice, opponents want to be whatever. I'm always going to be me anyway. So we were just being real, I feel, and I think we just know how big this fight is and how we're going to do it anyway.
Have you got a lot of family and stuff? People going to the arena, family, friends?
Yeah, it's going to be hectic. It's going to be.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
a lot.
Go on.
I think there could probably be close to maybe over 300 people from me alone. I think the arena is close to 5,000. So
that's a big old chunk, isn't it?
Yeah,
people, that's the crowd, like
massive chunk. So it'll be noisy, and you know what? If I sold 0 tickets, that arena would still be noisy, being the home boy. So it's something I'm just so excited to relish in.
What about your family and stuff? Are they excited or are they nervous? How are they kind of looking at it?
Yeah, I think it has a big fight feel. It has that feeling of like we know how big this is. But that being said, I'm kind of low key. Like I'm not the type of guy like to make sure everybody knows. If they know, they know. If they don't, they don't. I'm treating this like a fight in the UK. It's no real different to me. The cage is the cage and the arena is the arena. Yes, I will have moments where I appreciate it, but I go to Belfast on Thursday and sign out from normal life. I'll not be home till Monday or Tuesday of next week. So this is very much a process that I'm going through, and the family have to go through it the same way.
Indeed, it's got to be exciting for them in some ways. I'm sure for you, particularly maybe like I'm always interested in what fighters like parents and mums feel about them fighting and the big fights and stuff, just because as a parent myself as well, like I find it hard enough watching my sons play football. Sometimes it's quite stressful. And then I try to imagine them, watching them step into the cage for a world title fight, or even just, stepping into the cage in a big fight. And I think it'd be stressful, like quite difficult. And some fighters we speak to, particularly if one of their parents has been involved in combat sports or martial arts themselves, they're a bit more, they find it easier to watch and be relaxed. Whereas others, if they're completely removed from that style of life, they find it very, very difficult to see their children and family members getting punched in the face for a living. Like, where do your parents sort of fall on that?
Yeah, I think, I think they're just hard until, I think it very much is what it is, and it's the career path I've chosen. Yeah, I think it's just something they're immensely proud of. I think it's something that they support, but it's not an uncomfortable thing. They embrace it all now, and Rebecca's really the only one that go. That's my fiance, so
Yeah.
she'll go, and she's really the only one, like the only real close. I mean, my brothers and sisters go, but they're fine. They love it. So Rebecca would probably be the only real nervous one that will be there in attendance. But and even at that, she's totally fine now at this stage. She's well used to the fights.
Yeah, they're used to it now, aren't they? I suppose, but a lot of them. But I mean, even so, it's got to be nerve wracking for them, I would imagine, because I suppose when you're preparing, on fight night, you've got probably a set routine of things you'll do, and as you're getting ready. But for them, it's a lot of kind of waiting around and waiting for your big fight. So it's it's wow. I would be excited if it was my family, and like if it was my brother, I'd just be screaming my head off and going nuts. Like, and I'm sure,
You know what? I don't envy them though. I don't. I hate when I don't hate when my teammates are fighting. I struggle with the waiting in the hotel, the going to the venue. But when it's myself, I'm totally fine. But when it's teammates or friends and stuff, like it's a different matter. If I felt the way I felt for teammates, I probably wouldn't. I couldn't fight. I'm a mess.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, when you're fighting, I guess, both in the build up, but also in the fight, you're kind of in control, aren't you? Whereas when it's someone else, a teammate or whoever, you're waiting, and then you're watching, and you can't influence the result and the performance and things like this. Whereas obviously when you're in control, I suppose it's a bit easier from that side of things. In terms of the fight, how do you see the fight sort of going and developing? Do you think it's going to be like a tense affair or a bit of a banger? Like, how do you see you guys going at it?
I think our style of fight is very similar. We're high pressure fighters. Both favor striking. Both can do everything very well. But I do see us meeting in the middle, and who's going to take a step forward or who's going to take a step backward first. That kind of style of fight. But I just see as them 5 rounds progress, me just really starting to outshine and outwork. I just think I'm far too relentless. Justin's fantastic everywhere. He is that, and I mean that. And so am I. I just believe I've been against tougher opposition. I've beat better opposition. And I think on the 25th of June, it's just going to be another number for me, really.
Is there a particular area of the fight where you think you've got a certain particular advantage, or you could see that would be where you might dominate or get the victory as such, or do you think that it's just an all-round kind of thing?
I think it's very much going to be just how I feel in there and what I want to do. I see me winning the fight a lot of ways. It's just whatever gap I find first and take it. I do believe I'm very clinical. I know if I get a chance, I'll take it. So, something tells me it could be a very quick night as well. So,
Okay.
let's just see. But I'm ecstatic about this fight. Anytime I think about it, it makes me smile.
Yeah, it's got to be exciting, hasn't it? Apart from the fact that you're fighting, for the Cage Warriors world title, just the mere fact that it's in your hometown, venue, and your friends, your family, everyone's going to be there. It's that's what dreams are made of, isn't it? Like, that's the sort of thing you dream of as a kid. What about so that's that? Talk to me about the arena. Like, what have you been to see there previously when you were younger, or what have you seen in that arena?
Well, so I've seen I remember seeing a scrambler show, like a motorbike show.
Oh yeah, like motocross type thing.
Yeah. I've been busted in there.
Busted. Oh my days, Rhys! Come on now.
No, trust me, it wasn't my choice. It was. I've seen, what else have I seen? We watched ice hockey.
You were desperately trying to think of something which wasn't busted then, weren't you? You were like, think of something cool now.
Hockey there, and was there a few times with our school back in the day too. So I have a lot of experiences there. Like I've also fought there once,
Okay.
but it was a really early stage in my career, and it is nothing on this. This is my real first time fighting here. This fight's just huge compared to that last one.
What will the kind of final what will this final week be like now? So like it's Monday tomorrow. What's your week look like?
Yeah, so yesterday was my last kind of big intense session, a week out. Then today I rested, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday I'll do, probably an hour's kind of just technical drills, and then probably 15, 20, half an hour, minutes of like more tactical work. And then that'll be me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday, a bit more rest, start the weight cut that night. And then Friday, finish the weight cut off and weigh in. And then eat like a king. And then on Saturday night, we fight.
What with the weight and stuff, is everything, like on course and you don't foresee any problems and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think the longer running, the longer camp helped that dramatically. I come in at the start of this fight quite a bit heavier, and I've really got more athletic over the last kind of 4, 5, 6 months. After that Lesky fight, really, I've got really athletic, and the scales match that image. So, but you know what? It's been perfectly fine. I'm just glad I had that extra few weeks at the start. I never get unhealthy. I never get fat, so to speak. I just get a bit heavier, a bit more muscle. So, and I also think that'll play dividends in the fight as well. So it's exciting. But weight's good. Weight's perfect. And at this stage, I'm ahead of what I was for the Lesky fight.
With that, so you mentioned like the longer sort of camp, because obviously the fight was announced nice and early and stuff like that. Would you rather have I know, like, people like yourself and stuff who train all the time daily, you kind of stay in, fighting shape and stuff anyway. But would you rather have that longer sort of 12-week period, say, rather than like an 8-week camp?
If I'm being honest, I would probably prefer the shorter.
Okay.
I'd probably prefer the shorter. That being said, the longer doesn't bother me either. It's just I think sometimes when it's longer, you're like the risk of opponent change seems higher. Where when it's like 6 to 7 to 8 weeks is all like it's very much like, yeah, I'm sure they'll be there if they're agreeing for a fight in 7 weeks. Where it's 14 weeks, sometimes there's so much could change in that time. But like I've had times when I've had 16 weeks and I've times when I've had 6 days. So it really doesn't bother me too much. Again, as you said, as all professional athletes, we're training all the time. We're never far away.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I didn't think of that. But yeah, the more time you've got, something can happen, and someone might have to pull out or whatever it may be. So I suppose, yeah. And I guess the other side of it is there's more time to pick up an injury of some kind in that period as well. So yeah, I suppose there's benefits to both. I wanted to make mention of Paul Hughes as well, very briefly. Obviously, he was itching to be on this card as well. Wasn't able to. Well, I'm not sure if it was the same injury or if something's kind of played up since his recovery from the initial injury. That's a big blow for him, for the Irish as well, generally. But also, cage-wise, everyone would have liked to have seen him there alongside you. It must be gutting for him, isn't it, to miss that Belfast show and the Irish show? Like, it's...
Yeah, of course. It's like Paul's a teammate of mine. Like, it's something we've spoke about many times, and we often actually said when I came out of the UFC, we believed we would both have a shared card in Belfast, and it would be our send off. So, like, part of the story is missing for Paul here at the minute, but it's gotten. But he'll grow from this. Anybody that's talked to Paul knows he's an extremely strong-minded kid. You know, he will be just fine. Although it's gotten for Belfast, it's gotten for Paul, it's got it for all of us. But you know, you have to believe in silver linings, and he'll have his yet.
100%, mate. And I think it's one of them things where we talked about, 20 minutes ago, about those tough times. You learn so much more. Like he'll have learned something about himself with the initial injury, and he'll have learned, he'll pick up even more along this way. You can take positives from any situation. I think that we will see him and Jordan. We'll definitely see him face off again. But my prediction is that we'll see it in the UFC before we see it anywhere else.
I would hope so. You know what? I would hope so. Like, I like Paul again. Paul's a teammate, so I'll always have his back over Jordan. But I like Jordan. He deserves a shot in the UFC, as does Paul. Them like I wish UFC had the power to be like, you know what? That's a really good fight. Let's just take both of them and we'll put it on. Same as this fight of me and Justin. Like this, if this was in a UFC card, not one person would be like, why are they here? It makes
100%.
It's a higher level fight. Like some of the fighters on the UFC, like no beef to them, but their records are small and they're not great fighters. But then
or you get that guy the other week who lied about his record. Yeah. What was his name? I've forgotten his name now. But he had padded his record, should we say?
I seen him get cut for it. So
did he? I hadn't seen the follow up. There we go.
Has been served.
No surprise, is it really? I guess. Yeah, I funny enough that you said about having like your fight and Paul and Jordan on Cage Warriors. I had said that to Danny, like, why don't the UFC, like when they do a UFC London card, why not have like a Cage Warriors title fight on there? There's no reason really why they couldn't do it. I get that there's plenty of fighters who want to be on those cards, but I just think there's certain fights. It doesn't have to be all the, every time they do a UK card, but if there's like a big title fight which you're thinking of doing anyway, I think it can benefit both the UFC and Cage Warriors and stuff like that. Be nice to see.
I remember Cage Warriors took Darren Stewart, the guy, and they fought on a Cage Warriors card, even though they were both UFC. That was like, so there's something there. It obviously can work.
Yeah, and we all know they've got a good relationship, and it seems like it's all there on paper, but it hasn't quite happened yet. But I'm sure we'll see. I wanted to ask you a little bit, Rhys, about like what you were like when you were younger. So like when you were, how old were you when you got into combat sports? Remind me.
16.
So you were, pretty young, 16. So pre getting into combat sports, what were you doing? I seem to remember you liked a bit of football, didn't you? Was that?
Yeah, I like a bit of football. A bit of everything, but football was my kind of main thing. Just liked being active. I can't remember a Saturday morning in my life where I haven't played sport, and I mean that from when I was 6 or 7. I genuinely can't remember a Saturday where I haven't been playing some sport. So it's very much always been my life. So younger Rhys, like 16 before, that he would have been kicking a football or on a bike or just.
What about with the football? Sorry, mate, to interrupt you. With the football, do you still play a bit now?
No, never. I haven't kicked a ball in a long, long time. Although I'd love to. I'm actually saying I want the gym to do a 5-a-side just to give him that.
Just kicking heads these days, then.
Swapping footballs for heads.
So, were you any good when you were like before you sort of went down the combat sports route? Were you like a good footballer or someone who just enjoyed it?
I had my moments and stuff, but like, no, I wasn't fantastic. My problem as a footballer, like as a junior footballer, anyway, I couldn't string any consistency together. So like, we would have signed for a new team, had like a really good 4 or 5 matches, and then just started to like not be able to like string the performances together. So I found myself on the bench. Then I come on, we've done well, then come off. That type of
yeah.
So, it's more like a Michael Owen super sub than a starter.
Kind of in and out, almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
What any other sports that you were kind of naturally good at?
I mean, not really. I remember at the start of the MMA journey, our school done like a little boxing thing. like,
Okay.
I mean, it should have been illegal when I really think about it, but we were doing a boxing thing, and I took a shine to that as well. I think it was at the stage where I was starting to get tall, so I was quite short my whole school life, and then like my last year, I just blew up like in terms of
Really?
and reach and stuff. So I think the
I
box.
cannot imagine you short. That's
Oh
really weird.
yeah, I was like, yeah, like I haven't been taught like I haven't been tall that long, but I mean since I was 17 or 18, like I
Yeah,
started.
yeah.
That was quite strange. I mean, I always took a natural shine to boxing, but I've never boxed. It was just MMA, but I always took a shine to that in the early days, So I mean, I think I was naturally good there.
What was you like as a person, like as a kid? Were you quite good? Were you naughty? Were you in and out of trouble, doing
Well,
all your work?
I think what a teacher always would have said was I was well mannered and respectful, but I liked the chat. I kept people back, that type of person. But I always took that well because as long as I'm not considered cheeky and arrogant, and
Yeah,
you know,
and malicious and stuff. Yeah,
yeah, I was never that, or I never would have been a bully. I would have been the person to hang out with the bully. I was going to say stick up for the bully, but that wasn't me either. I was non-confrontational as well, so um, you know, no, I believe I've always been a kind person. I believe in life. If you're not a good person, then you're nothing. That's kind of motto I live by, which is harsh but true.
yeah. I think I've had the pleasure recently of speaking to a few different people, fighters, footballers, and I spoke to a rapper on Thursday in the studio, Jay Speaks, which is going to be out soon. And actually, I knew like a little bit. I knew some of his music, and I knew a bit about him, but not a great deal. So I was looking forward to it, and the conversation went in completely the most unexpected direction ever. So, and it goes to I suppose it kind of speaks to people's preconceptions about if you say this is your job, people just assume automatically whatever it is. So obviously you hear rapper and you think one way, but he was like, we talked about the importance of like positivity and taking positives from negative situations, and he really just had such a fascinating conversation. But you seem very much on that kind of same wavelength of like positive, and you're like you said, you're well mannered, you're polite, and all that sort of stuff. But you're also you're a nice chap, shall we say?
Yeah, I think like a good person. A person told me one time it was like every. I don't know if this is a curse word or not, but everybody has enough shit in their bucket. It's like everybody's dealing with their own stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is it. Like you don't know what journey anybody's on, or again the whole don't judge someone how until you walk their path and all that carry on. But I think that in life as a whole, if everyone was kind and a good person and didn't try, you don't lose your candle doesn't lose the brightness and putting out someone else's flame, all that stuff. Like there's no need for you to bring yourself up by putting someone down. So, I think if we all lived by that, the world would be probably a better place. And
Yeah,
had it
100%.
and punched each other in the face the odd week. Would all be
Yeah,
experience.
get your demons and your frustrations out with a bit of face punching, and then the rest will take care of itself. But it is like that thing, in it, of you never know what's going on behind closed doors, and unfortunately, sometimes certain types of people forget that, don't they? And they'll, whether it's on social media or it's bullying and things like this, you can get a kind of negative side. I mean, you don't know what someone's going through and things like that. But that kind of attitude and the way that you are, is that something that was kind of drummed into you when you were younger, or is it just because you were brought up a certain way that you just naturally became that type of person?
I mean, like, I think we came from I came from a family that you know, worked for everything. Extremely hard working family. Nothing was given for free. Nothing was without being earned. Extremely fair, but we were also treated extremely well. So I think I think that's just brushed off on us. The apple never falls too far from the tree, and I think yeah, we've just been raised with manners and to be respectful, and again, not to put anybody else down, to put yourself up, and yeah, it's definitely how we were raised.
What about you mentioned your siblings earlier? Are you the younger, older, middle?
Yeah,
Where are you in the standing?
I'm the baby of the family. I'm the youngest. Yeah, they're all older. I have 2 sisters and a brother. They're all older than me, so all doing different stuff in life, all doing very different careers to what I'm doing. But we have a good bond anyway, and we stay in contact when we can.
Did you always get on like when you were younger as well? Were you sort of
Yeah, I
these
think
kind of siblings who got on?
me
Or
and
was it dead arms galore?
me and my brother were definitely dead arms galore, or he gave me dead arms. And then my sisters, I always a typical brother and sister relationship, totally fine. But now me and my brother, we're all very close. We've all grew up, and we don't see each other as much, but when we do, it's a bit more meaningful now.
Yeah, 100%. As you get older, isn't it? It's like everyone's got their own jobs and family and kids and whatever else, and you don't see each other as often, but when you do, it means a bit more.
Yeah.
See, if I had an older brother who had given me like dead arms and dead legs throughout my childhood, and then I became a professional fighter, at least once I'd have to like submit him.
Yeah, well, he actually does a bit of jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
So every now and then we do get a roll, and every now and then I do get to show how the tables have turned.
Yeah. I'm not small anymore.
Yeah, but he's good too. He's a tricky grappler. So,
did he ever consider like a similar career to you, like fighting and stuff like that, or does he do it more as a hobby?
So he's obviously a bit older. At the time, like he was working full time when I was a student, so to speak. So he never really was able to give it the same commitment, and then it snowballed for me, and when it could have snowballed for him, it would have meant his career probably had a change. So it was him,
You mentioned student. What did you do from like school wise? Did you leave like at 16, or did you go into further education?
Yeah, so I left school at 17 and then went to a local college and studied. Funny enough, I studied business admin first for a year, and then realized that I hated it.
I was just about to ask you, do you feel like that benefited you, like studying business admin?
It's funny because I love business. I love I own my own gym and I run the gym, so it's me some well. But I mean, some of the things we had to do was see how fast you could type on a keyboard, and I'm sorry, but that's just not for me. And then I left that and was on a 2-year course on sports, so that was very for me. And then after that, I left and went and got a job, and then left that job and now turned into a job.
So where did that sort of decision and change take place with the day job and doing a bit of combat sports to becoming a kind of professional and going for it?
So I remember I fought Tim Barnett for a British title. No, I fought Jai Herbert for a British title and won the title. And I remember thinking there must be a stage where you just have to go all in. Funny enough, Mark Diakesi was there at the time, and we were having a chat with a few fighters, and I think I just really made the decision. I then talked to Rodney, my coach, and said what I wanted to do, and he said, well, you can use the gym for privates, to earn a few pounds during the week. I'd done that for about 6 months. I then went and got a part-time job, but then fights really snowballed, and I was in a great position where I could leave the fights. And I think I would need to look at the exact dates, but that's maybe been 6 years I've been on my own, so it's that's pretty cool for me to think about.
So did you say you own your own gym? Yeah,
I own my own gym.
Tell me a little bit about that. I am kind of interested in that. I know it's a separate from your fight going in.
So the gym is more like it's a general population gym. It's not like a fighting gym. It's it's a different gym. So It's a small group training facility. Again, like membership only. People like that. And it's like cardio and strength, and fantastic people. The best people we could ever have as our members. Some of the coaches are also professional fighters. Mark Andrews, a coach there. So just a real good place, and a place that I'm extremely proud of. Rebecca, the fiance, she works there too. She helped me.
Oh, wicked.
So it's a real internal thing, and it's just, what, I'm just unbelievably proud of it, and it complements the fight career well. They're all going this weekend. There's a serious amount of members from the gym coming, so it's just what a thing to be involved with.
Talk to me, and this is probably a weird question which you've not been asked about on your, in your career, but I'm interested. There's a reason I'm interested, which I'll tell you in a minute. But talk to me about the influence of your fiance on you, and like how you met and stuff like that. If you don't mind.
No, how we met first. We Rebecca studied in England, and she was home for a weekend, and we were out with friends. I was out with a group of guys. She was out with a group of girls. And funny enough, we were in a smoking area, and we both did a smoke and got tan. And that was that. She moved back to England. I was obviously mad keen, and I went over to England to see her on a date. Flew home, done it again, and then she moved home, and then it just made a lot of sense. And then became a couple, and that was nearly 6 years ago now. And then got engaged, and it's been exciting to have lived together for the last 4 or 5 years. How influential is she on me? Massively. Nobody knows me more than her, if that makes sense. We're in each other's armpit all day. She works with me as well now. So she's extremely influential, and everything I do is for us to a sense as well. It's, if I can create freedom and these big fights and be able to do more for our life, then it benefits her as well. So extremely influential on me.
Cool. Yeah, the reason I asked is obviously I'm older than you, but we won't say how much, but and I'm older than you by a little bit. And my missus, she's not only like the most influential person in my life, but she kind of changed my life, and she changed my outlook on stuff for the better. And I'm interested in people that you're a fighter, and we're doing an interview, and rather than just asking the same old questions, I would like to get to know you a bit and get to know the people who make you who you are at the end of the day. And I like to think that the people watching and the people who will listen would like to get to know the other side of Rhys McKee, and who's who's behind the man, as it were.
And a lot of people don't talk about it. Rebecca's also she's very good at pulling me down sometimes, like from my high horse. Sometimes I'll have really stupid, like I'll admit it, really stupid, crazy ideas of plans, and she'll.
That sounds like me.
She's like a fantastic outlook and stuff, being like, right, let's just think about this, let's write it down, let's talk about it, and then we fall somewhere in the middle, and it normally works out just right. So just changed my perspective and everything, so I can definitely relate to what you're saying. And
in terms of your fight career, mate, what who are some of the people who have influenced you over the years, and who have given you, I don't know, advice, or the kind of people you depend on?
Yeah, well, obviously, you've got my coach Rodney, who's always been invaluable. Norman Park played a massive part in my career, because he was the first person that I realized you could do it for Northern Ireland. He was the first person that I seen reach the UFC, so he played a massive part. People like Mark Andrew, who's been my training partner 12 years. Again, massive characters that are still with me from day one. And then if you're going into like the more well-known names, like I'm very motivated by people who are the same type of style and body build as me. So like at the minute, Adesanya is a massive person that I watch, because I think he's just a middleweight version of me. I think he's fantastic, and he's everything I kind of strive for in a fighter.
Yeah, you got a similar kind of physique and reach and stuff as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's interesting because like I'm from Wales, small country, and it's difficult when you come from a small country. Sometimes there's not always people who've already made it in the field that you're looking to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a fighter, like now there's numerous Welsh fighters both already in, like Jack Shaw and people like that, and boxers, and there's also a load coming up. But years ago, you didn't have those kind of names to look at. And is that similar from like where you're from, where it's taken a while for, there's not hundreds of people who've kind of made it?
Oh yeah,
to look up to?
I think I believe I am the third, if not third, then definitely the fourth fighter from our country ever to be in the UFC.
Wow.
That's not a big stat. I was the youngest, So, yeah, like it's very much real life to be like, it was realistic to believe that it was unachievable from a young age until I seen like the likes of Norman and stuff doing it. That really changed everything for me.
Yeah, and I guess when you haven't seen people from your area achieve the goals that you want to achieve, it can feel out of reach.
Mm-hmm. Totally,
because it's natural, isn't it? I will let you go now, mate. I'm just waiting for Ben to log in, but I'm having a whale of a time talking to you, mate. It's a bit of a different one for me because obviously Danny's not with me. I'm used to having to shut up sometimes to let Danny get a word in edgeways, and I haven't had to worry about that tonight, which has been.
It's nice to chat about normal stuff too. Especially in the run up to the fight. I've done.
Yeah. I bet you could just get asked the same question all the time, and
I've maybe done 10 interviews this week, and if I could record myself answering them, I could have played them all.
Yeah, that's it. And I try to like vary up a bit because it's not only is it you're getting asked the same questions and your same answers, but also then like people are hearing the same answers from the different, same things and stuff like that. So it's a weird one. Like Rhys, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. And next time we have you back on, which you're more than welcome anytime. You'll bring the gold with you, and you'll be the new Cage Warriors World Champion. There you go.
Absolutely.
Best of luck with it, my friend. I've been watching the fight through my fingers, as I always do when I watch the former guests who I enjoy speaking to. I suddenly find it much more difficult to watch them fight, but there we go. No, I appreciate your time, mate. You take care. Have a good week, and best of luck next Saturday.
Yes, mate. Thank you so much.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye-bye.
And just like that, I'm joined by none other than author, boxing trainer, and boxing pundit, Mr. Ben Doughty. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, not bad, Simon. Apologies there. I was a little tardy at driving because watching a film with Natalie that was 2.5 hours long, Scorsese thing, and actually lost track of the time and was like, God damn, let's get on this thing.
No, I appreciate you joining me. And it was fine. It was only because I had said to Rhys that we'd be sort of done by about sort of 10 to or whatever. Yeah. But I also would normally have Danny to kind of bounce go back and forth with, until you were available. But Danny he was stuck on the way coming back from Poland. So he got delayed. Oh. He might jump in at some point, but I'm starting to think that he's, with the way the flights are at the moment and airports, I'm not sure he's going to make it, unfortunately. But that gives me and you a chance to talk a nice bit of boxing. And there's been some stuff happening in the world of boxing over the last week. We'll talk about Anthony Joshua and Usyk being announced, the rematch. And of course, Tyson Fury said he'd come back for, I think it was $500 million. It's ridiculous.
Something reasonable like that.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you very quickly about Ricky Hatton's fight. Is there some sort of change to that, a delay or something?
Yeah, it was supposed to be July 2nd, and it was twinned with a professional show. Because what you've got to realise is it's an exhibition between him and Marco Antonio Barrera. It's not a licensed professional contest. Obviously, there was a difference. Yeah. And for whatever reason, I think they probably thought it firmed the whole thing up. But I think it was two-sided. It was going to be on the same bill as Hughie Fury versus Michael Hunter, set for Manchester Arena on July 2nd. And I think they probably fed off each other both. I think Ricky versus Barrera was increasingly legitimised by it being on that card, which is like a sanction card. And I think probably Hughie Fury is not exactly Mr. Dynamite box office. Probably benefited from having a couple of boxing legends on his card as well. So it was kind of a nice novelty kind of feature. And when Hughie Fury pulled out injured, he had some kind of illness. I think it was just like a virus or whatever that stopped him training properly. So when that got pulled, I think they decided not just to go alone with Ricky versus Marco, And I see the thing for me, which I've said a few times on my kind of socials, is that while I've got very little interest really in the exhibition itself between the two of them, I think it's been brilliant for Ricky. You look at how he's so buzzing, he's back in his element, because that's what fighters are like. They don't ever really want it to end. He looks magnificent, and he looks so much younger and he's so much healthier. And I also know that Ricky doesn't have the most healthiest kind of habits when he's in retirement. He hasn't had them. He never had them healthy habits in between his fights. He would go on the booze. He would blow up in weight. He likes his comfort food. So it's just brilliant to see him looking so sharp, fit, young, and motivated. And what it means, I suppose, is that he can carry on training for longer. Buzzing off of it, waiting for the November. I think it's November 12th, they reschedule. Yeah. The question for me after that really is, once Ricky's done that and had that high, of the training and the appearance in the ring with Barrera, is where he goes from there. Will he continue to live a healthy kind of gym-based lifestyle, or what I suspect is it's not enough for him. They need the end game, and they need to walk under the spotlight at the end of it. Otherwise, some fighters can't be bothered just to tick over and stay fit and eat well and diet. It's one thing. We
saw Nazim Hamid recently. There were some pictures of him, they were quite shocking. I got to be honest.
They would have shocked me if I didn't already know he was in that shape. But there was one, Simon, where he's looked from a particularly bad angle. He seems to have been captured, and he's holding some crap polythene bag, whatever. Perhaps it was for some high-end store, but it looks like a Tesco's bag or similar. Yeah. And it just looks so inglorious and unheroic as an image when he just. But you know what? Some people say, quite a lot of people in the business who claim to know him or of his affairs these days, they say, "Oh, tell you what, he's happy as Larry. He's really chilled. He doesn't care. He's not bothered, and he's got a good life." And but you would like to have his money and all that, usual stuff. Personally, I don't believe anybody can be truly happy and spiritually, emotionally, and physically well when they're that far over their ideal weight. I think there's too many things in your life it would blight, no matter how fucking loaded you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 100%.
And his brother, you may have seen recent comments from his brother, because they're at war over. The family are at odds over something or other. Who says he's just become a recluse and eaten himself into this morbidly obese state, and he's not in a good way.
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it, that anyone's in that situation. But yeah, it's one of them. With Ricky Hatton, I mean, look, it is a bit of a weird one for me, because they could sell that show just off Hatton's name, because it's in Manchester. Of course, he's a big name. But like you say, maybe there's a bit of give and take in terms of the two fights, and it benefits all parties, should we say. But like you say, he'll stay fitter and healthier and stuff like that. I had Gary Lockett back in the studio this week.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of the things which we talked about was like fighters ballooning in between fights, because he trains a lot of the Welsh MMA fighters that they're boxing. And we talked about Paddy Pimblett recently has been pictured in, ballooned up to ridiculous weights in between his fights. And we talked about a couple of boxers over the years who did the same. And Ricky Hatton's the first one really that springs to mind. And Gary was, as a coach himself, he was just it's just not healthy for your body, and to cut weight, do your fight, and then put on, a tremendous amount of weight and eat the wrong things and all the rest of it. But also, he was commenting on the potential dangers to the brain, because you lose when you do the weight cut, and you lose some of the protective water around the brain.
Yes, yeah.
And obviously the fluctuations in weight can cause issues from that side of things as well. So he's very much of the opinion that fighters should try and stay, within a realistic kind of.
I think within £10 to £14 of it wouldn't kill you. I wouldn't have thought. You could still have some takeaways and some not do your running for a little bit after that. I mean, what I would say, I only box amateur, as you know, but I did have that thing of focus and weight cut and leave the booze alone when I was still drinking, back then. And then you'd have a period when you'd box whatever. I mean, as an amateur, you're available to box any kind of time. But if you were getting ready for, let's say, the championships, then you train, really like what people might call a camp for 5 or 6 weeks, and then you box. And in my case, the most recent example, you lose the fight you were getting ready for in the championships. Lost in the semi-finals, the Northwest Division. So then I think, okay, well, I still did a bit of running, like maybe 2 a week, and but I would eat. You'd have some of those comfort foods you've missed. You go on the lash with your mates, all that kind of thing, and you maybe do that. You might do that for 2 weeks, and but get out on the road for a couple of runs as well, and then go back in the gym and get back to normal. That's what I would suggest. That you shouldn't put on lots and lots of weight in that kind of situation.
In that period, yeah. And the other side of that is something which Gavin Gwynn said to me a few months back, just before his title fight, actually, was, and even Lloyd Jermaine said something similar, because he would have missed out if he would have missed out on his Welsh title shot if he wasn't ready at all times. So there's that side of things. If you're always in shape and you're always ready, if something comes along last minute.
Yeah. Exactly, and like you say, anyone who's not a favoured kind of fighter, who doesn't have those connections so much, like you spoke about Gavin Gwynn, if you're a bit more of a wild card, but you're ambitious, then you have to be ready for any opportunity, because you never know what will come. Another Welsh example would be Steve Robinson back in the day, who suddenly got that WBO title shot, unexpectedly on very short notice. So someone else on the other side of the coin, someone like Bernard Hopkins, who was an A-side fighter and a world champion for a very long time, he was always in shape, and he didn't have this kind of out of season, or he didn't have cheat days. He just carried on with a very kind of monastic regime, which I realise not everybody has that kind of mindset, and they're not driven by that supreme sense of purpose. They just can't do it. Do you know what Kerry Kayes said about Ricky Hatton and his habits between fights, and his drinking and benders and all the rest of it? He said, the trouble is, right, he said, you could tell him not to do that. He said, and if you did, and if that was imposed on him somehow, I suspect Ricky would have a short career, shorter than the way people are predicting, because of the decadence and the damage. He said, because he wouldn't want to do it anymore, and he'd stop boxing rather than, and he said a similar thing about the fact Ricky was in the habit of eating a massive fry-up on the morning of a fight when he'd already weighed in the day before. And he said, nutritionally, he said, I don't like it that he does that. He said, but you have to factor in the balance of his kind of peace of mind and his happiness and his kind of just keeping him happy in those hours before the fight, he said, because that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you're a fountain of knowledge when it comes to boxing, of course, which is why we enjoy talking to you. I was wondering, though, can you think of any other fighters that over the years who used to kind of maybe not look after themselves as
Roberto
Duran?
Roberto Duran will balloon in weight. And, when he beat Sugar Ray Leonard in June 1980 in Montreal, in that fantastic 15-rounder that a lot of people think he got under Leonard's skin in the build-up with some of his, coarse behaviour directed towards Leonard and his wife and stuff. And some people think that Leonard was kind of essentially kind of drawn into a toe-to-toe war with Duran on Duran's kind of terms, because it became a machismo thing and it became personal. And then in the rematch, which was only 5 months later than the original fight, that was November 12th, actually, November 25th, 1980 in New Orleans. When, you probably know that Duran quit rather famously and disgracefully in the 8th round, with Leonard doing all the alley shuffle, shoulder wiggle and the wind-up with the right hand and all the rest of it. And he said no mess, allegedly said no mess, as in no more. One thing he certainly did was quit. And he blamed it on various things like, stomach cramps and etc. But the point being that Duran had ballooned up to, some people said, as much as 190 pounds, having beaten Leonard at 147 and having stepped up only recently from 135 pounds lightweight, having skipped out light welterweight altogether. Apparently he ballooned up to about like 13 stone, they said. And then suddenly the Leonard team effectively forced a quick rematch. There was too much money. They offered Duran basically $8 million payday, which he couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
And Don King told him the rematch was like in a ludicrously short amount of time, really. It was several weeks away. He told him he had either 6 or 8 weeks, something like that. And Duran was very, very heavy going into camp, and he was taking diuretics and stuff like that. Some people say, and I described this in the Benitez book because it was relevant to the Duran-Benitez rivalry, that he hadn't eaten for 60 hours before he got on the scales, and it was on the day of the fight, bear in mind. It was different rules in 1980. And then what Duran is said to have eaten after he got off the scales is just ridiculous, even in a sport that throws up a lot of dysfunctional tales. So Duran would be the other poster boy, I would say, for not living right and blowing up in between. And Nassim, apparently Nassim Hamid too. He just loved food. But Brendan Ingle always said he could eat for England, that lad.
God, you wouldn't think it, would you? When he was like, he looks like so slight and skinny
and lean, but
amazing. So let's talk a bit of the various news, and then we'll talk about some of the fights from last night. The Kambosos triggered his rematch with Devin Haney, as predicted, really, wasn't it? But I think we both kind of agreed that we didn't really want to see it, but it's coming either way.
From a fan's point of view, I think we'd rather not see it, and I think some people say this is why rematch clauses should be done away with. It shouldn't be a thing. Perhaps you could argue there has to be a justification for triggering a rematch clause, like there has to be some kind of the idea that it's in the public interest, as it were. But
like
when
it's close
but Simon, when has boxing ever governed itself in accordance with the public interest? Well, if we're going to apply that principle to rematch clauses, what else will we have to apply it to? Boxing and the public interest have never been, they've always been rather remote bedfellows. What was I going to say? You can hardly blame Kambosos, can you? Because
no, of course not.
He's going to want to try and put it right, and it's the biggest money fight out there for him, and it's the way of getting the belts that he lost back. So you can't blame Kambosos. And you know what? Whether we like it or not, they have these rematch clauses to protect themselves. If they lose, he did lose. He's entitled to another shot. I suppose we've got to suffer it. And you know what? You never know, do you? I never wanted to see the third Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder fight. Never wanted to see it. I just thought, what is the point? Because he basically triggered his rematch clause entitlement to a third fight, didn't he? Yeah. We didn't want to see it. And what did we get? A classic. So I doubt it will happen. I imagine it will literally be a rerun with Haney and Kambosos, but we can wait and see.
And I mean, on that subject, you could also say that really, if you're looking for reasons for a rematch, the AJ versus Usyk one, really, it was so convincing. There was no need for a rematch from that point of view.
It was, but I don't know about you, but I just find I expect Usyk to win again, but I find the idea more intriguing than Kambosos Haney too, don't you? I just do. Yeah,
100%. And we will talk about that in a bit more detail. I wanted to get your thoughts on a couple of stories, both very different stories. One a bit comical, one tragic. Obviously, we didn't speak last week, so I wanted to get your thoughts on the South African fight. Obviously, we spoke the weekend. The clip came out, and I think the latest news at the time was that the gentleman was in a coma, and in hospital, and then unfortunately went on to pass away later that week. It was. I was quite frustrated, and I got to say, I was quite upset by some of the comments on social media, even before he, it turned out that he had passed away. Just the kind of attitude, laughing at it, and kind of making fun of it on social media that morning, because it was clear that something was wrong, and it wasn't something that that you see on a weekly basis, and there was clearly something going on with his brain. And I don't know. It
reminded me, Simon, of some people are rather crass and sort of seem to lack the kind of dignity and grace that you hope goes into a human being, really, ideally, on factory settings. But like you just said, and I know you're not a boxing nut like me who doesn't go back 40 years with it, but you still are able to say that is unusual and it's clearly a distressing sight. The fact that some people thought it was comical just because he was flailing at an invisible opponent, etc. And also some people are friends of mine who should have known better said, not having that, that's dodgy. That's I mean, I'm not being funny, but who the hell would try and rig
a fight like that?
You just wouldn't do it, would you? Because it would be just such a bizarre kind of ruse to say we're going to fix the fight, but this is how we're going to do it. So it was obviously brain injury related, and we ended up getting the worst case scenario. It does happen in the ring, but it was see, that's the trouble, because it was my page. I don't know if my page is public in general, but some of my posts are, and that one was, because that one got so many shares, and I think it got about 250,000 views, just the video that I put on my page, regardless of what it got anywhere else. Unfortunately, that opens it up to heathens. I mean, I've built up a good crew over the years, and it's not. We're not trying not to be too snobbish about it, but it's a bit of a members club, and people earn their kind of
like-minded people, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And when I post something like that, I'm opening it up to droves of idiots that I don't know, don't recognise, that maybe anywhere from Acton to Arkansas, and and then you suddenly get all these laughing emoji reactions on it, and I'm like, what is wrong with people, But unfortunately, the lad did pass away. He'd only had 4 fights before that, by the way, so he had his whole career ahead of him, whole life ahead of him. Yeah. And it's a cliche, but it does. They do take the ultimate risk going in there. Some of them pay the ultimate price. And what can we say? I mean, I think we probably had the conversation before that to make boxing entirely safe would probably render it without its appeal, and so we just have to do what we can, to give fighters the best chance to avoid those kind of things, But I don't think you're ever going to eradicate it.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, some of the emojis and the comments and the things which frustrated me came from, people who I would consider boxing fans, and. Some of them weren't, your sort of your casual fan who just watched the the big fights and stuff. Some of them were the guys who sit down and watch boxing, every fight they can, basically. And it was disappointing. It was disappointing, I got to say. On a sort of lighter note, we saw Julius Francis defend himself in an altercation, and. Similar, I'm glad to see that there was no charges brought, first and foremost. But most of all, I really hate this thing, which I'm assuming has been bred from social media over the past 5 to 10 years. And then I think the kind of COVID break, if you like, for a couple of years, has given people this false sense of security that they can say the sorts of things they say on social media to people, to their, up close and in person, and that person will not respond. But what did you make of it overall, the clip, and Julius Francis obviously knocked the man unconscious?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I say, those people were being very obnoxious. As it happens, I vaguely know the kid who got knocked out. I know Julius, I've known him for years. I spoke to Julius in the middle of the week. Because the reason I spoke to him was a friend of mine who's very wealthy told me to tell Julius if he needs a good brief, and if he needs any funds for his defence, let me know, and we've got it covered. Because the universal wave of support for Julius was massive, wasn't it? It was almost unanimous. I hardly heard one dissenting voice saying, no, you know what, he shouldn't have done that. And there's fighters who've ended up in on manslaughter, getting nicked for manslaughter and doing a lot of bird over there. And that's true, by the way. And I wouldn't have even completely disagreed with that kind of input, at least. But there wasn't any. It was just literally like, chat shit, get banged. More power to you. Hopefully they'll learn some more respect now. But I have met the kid who got knocked out, and he works in a gym just across the bridge from Canning Town. It's called Aberfeldy. And he seemed like a very nice, respectful young man when I met him. I went there with a friend once or twice, and he was doing pad work with people and stuff, and he seemed like a nice fella. But they'd obviously had a skinful of
alcohol makes people do silly things, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think they might have had some stimulants as well, maybe. I mean, you always tend to think that.
Speculation is there.
And Julius told me that whatever you see outside, they were being 20 times worse inside for quite a while before they were ejected. He told me they were spitting at security, they were swearing, effing and blinding, jumping on tables, jumping off of tables. One of them landed next to a woman who had a baby in a pram. Jumping off a table or a bar stool, whatever, which also means it wasn't, as you can see, it was light outside. I know summer's in now, but it was quite early. It wasn't like the
it wasn't a late night thing,
you know. So they were being absolutely abysmal in their behaviour, and you can see the whole behaviour outside. I mean, that ginger clown. I mean, say he's bald and ginger. He's got the best of both worlds, but you can see ginger because of the red beard. I mean, he's talking a load of nonsense and trying to be the big man and all that. So, looking at them, it didn't engender any sympathy, did they? Now, Julius, I'll be honest, it looks like Julius was so fed up with the guy in the end that he decided to take a circuitous route, wait for the guy and chin him. He said he didn't. He said, no. He said, we're taught to take yourself out the line of fire. If you're copping the brunt of a drunken, drug, induced punter's anger, get yourself out of their line of vision and try to make it less about you. And he said that's what he was doing. And then the guy came up to him, raised his hand. So he gave him it was like a right hook, wasn't it? That's not Julius's best shot. You can be sure of that. He was standing quite square when he threw it, and he didn't really turn it over like he could have done. So it was certainly enough to deal with the guy and turn the lights out. Yeah. But Julius, if anyone thinks that's as hard as Julius Francis hits, he was restraining it, honestly.
Yeah, and my worry when I saw it was I thought he's going to get done.
Yes.
Because you see people getting done, for these punches that, knock someone out or whatever. And you see it a lot in the news and, in the papers and things like this. And my fear was that he was going to end up inside doing a bit of time for something which, at the end of the day, like you say, these people were being,
or even losing his badge, even
just losing his, losing his license, losing his job, anything like that would have been so unfair and really.
And the great thing was that the governor of the security company absolutely backed him, which was brilliant. Yes. He said, we stand with Julius. I think basically, to be honest, Simon, as much it was the kind of video that you kind of watched maybe 10 times and got a warm glow from. I think, in all honesty, he dodged a bullet there, Julius, because it could have been worse for him. The worst case scenario would be the guy doesn't wake up, because I heard it took him like 20 minutes to come around, So
Jesus.
that wasn't too clever.
That was a bit anxious for 20 minutes for Julius.
Do you know what I mean? He was arrested, but he was released with no further action, and so that was good. But in a way, he was lucky. Yes. And ideally, you don't want to be chinning these obnoxious punters very often at all if you can help it, which is why usually it doesn't come to that, and that's all part of a doorman's kind of the skills that a good doorman has.
Yeah, and I think ultimately you're right, and like we've seen over the years, there's been people who've had fights on Saturday nights, and one punch. There's only take one punch, and someone can get hurt, and they can bang their head or whatever.
I've known of two boxers who've done years for manslaughter because they hit a punter on the door. One was at Stringfellows, and the other that was a fellow called Marcus Lee, who I used to know from the Repton. Another was Gary Delaney, who fought David Hay and former British champion. And he was in for a long time, 9 or 10 years, because they've hit someone on the door who hasn't gotten up from it.
Do they treat boxers differently? So say a former boxer has does hit someone or whatever. Do they treat him as kind of, because I know in some countries, if you're a former professional fighter, you get treated slightly differently, almost like you're carrying a weapon in that your arm, your hands and feet are potentially classed as weapons. Do you know if that's the same in this country?
It is, yeah, absolutely. If you're a former professional boxer, you've got more problems than if you're just a. I remember the guy at the chairman of the Southern Area Council, Mick Collier, who's very high up in the British Boxing Board of Control, as well as being the chairman of the Southern Area Council. He's one of the main guys in the British Boxing Board of Control. He always tells lads when they, young amateur, wide-eyed lads, when they come for their professional license, one of the things he warns them about is conduct outside the ring and such things. And he says, and if you hit somebody on the street, he asked one of my guys that I took to get his license, and he said, what do you do for a living? He said, I do cladding. He said, well, son, if you get in a fight now, assuming we approve this license, they're not going to charge you as a roof. They're not going to do you as a roof cladder. They'll do you as a professional boxer. Then that was the distinction.
Yeah, and I can see the logic to it. I can definitely see the logic to it. But thankfully, it looks like Julius is not going to have any further issues.
No.
Okay, so before we get to Mr. Tyson Fury and his financial demands, let's talk about the rematch. Joshua and Usyk rematch August 20th in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
It's announced, official.
Yeah.
First and foremost, are you disappointed it's in Saudi Arabia, or did you?
Not really, to be honest. They had the first fight in London, so I don't mind the fact it's not in the UK. Some people have got moral issues with Saudi Arabia in general, haven't they? And I know they've raised them about the World Cup as well. With their kind of human rights record and stance on certain things, which is seen as draconian and out of step with our kind of more millennial values that we have now. But I don't really have an opinion on. I know some people say Saudi Arabia is a really dodgy country and we shouldn't be doing business. People shouldn't be doing business or bringing glamour to their kind of scene. But I'm not really inclined to comment on that. And the reason being, I don't have a real strong conviction on it. I think I'd need to know more about the situation, to be honest with you. But, we've seen Joshua Ruiz in Saudi Arabia, and they did say this one was likely to be there. So I think I'm not really disappointed, no, because I wasn't intending to go. I sometimes broker tickets for some of these big events, and I suppose it would have been easier for me. I sold tickets for the Joshua Usyk first fight, so perhaps I am disappointed about that. Now you remind me of it, because it's going to be harder. I'll probably still be asked for tickets, but it's a little bit more complex, isn't it, when people have got to fly to Saudi Arabia and all that. But no, I expected it to be somewhere else, and Saudi Arabia is one of the players involved now in the international fight markets, and that's what it is what it is.
Yes, that's it, and it's kind of, it is what it is. In terms of the actual fight, do you see it go in a particular way? Like it does seem very much as if Anthony Joshua, at least on paper, is going to come out in a more aggressive fashion.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you? I mean, he's got to try to do something differently, and I don't think he can outbox the fella, because the guy is an elite level boxer with a great IQ. I think the biggest margin for any kind of swing and a different result or a different fight would be Usyk's situation. People say, I mean, he's been in a war zone, obviously, and people say that he's lost a lot of weight and lost a lot of muscle, while the situation's been playing out the way it has in his homeland. That could make a difference, particularly if we agree that Joshua's kind of advantages are purely physical, and he needs to make the most of those and try and manhandle the fella. He's got a world-class coach, a proven world-class coach with a track record in Robert Garcia. That we have to see what difference that makes. I'm still quite intrigued to see if Anthony Joshua can do any better. I mean, I would think Usyk, being the consummate professional he is, and he is, he's a very, very good boxer. I would expect him to win again. Really, I wouldn't see. I mean, certainly if I was part of Usyk's team, I would be like, why would you lose to the guy having done the job you did last time and knowing what you're up against? But it's interesting, isn't it? Because Joshua has recently signed this massive deal with DAZN, and if he loses again to Usyk, surely it will impact slightly on his potentialities and his market value, at least to a degree, and perhaps it will impact on the kind of the telephone numbers that were spoken about in that deal.
I wonder, because I don't know how these deals work, but if DAZN have signed him to an exclusive deal, I'd imagine they've paid him a hefty sum, for that privilege. But then I would imagine he gets a cut of the, each pay-per-view that he fights on their platform. Yeah. However, if he's already been paid a hefty sum to sign with them, to him, at least from that point of view, it wouldn't matter if he wins or loses, other than the pay-per-views in the future would be bigger if he wins. You see my logic behind that? He gets the money anyway.
That's a good point, but they usually offer you a several fight deal. That's usually what happens, and it's said to be worth whatever it's worth. And the figure being bandied around was 100 million, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Something like that. So it's usually based on a number of fights. That's the idea, and it usually gets based on a number of years. That's what I'm aware of. As you said, I mean, presumably he's already had a major financial inducement to sign at all. Above and beyond the DAZN deal, I wonder what it does to Anthony Joshua's career and trajectory if he loses again. I'm not about to say that he's got nowhere else to go and he's finished, but I do think it is quite a negative impact it would have, because he's not Arturo Gatti, who could lose 3 times on the spin and still be welcomed back by HBO with open arms, because he was just so exciting and he could always be regenerated. I mean, Chisora could even always make money because he's a commercial attraction, and his commercial value is not based on him winning, clearly, because he loses as often as he wins these days. But I think with AJ, if he loses to the same guy again, particularly with certain roads to the title barred, because he's at the minute, you've got Fury still holds the WBC belt, whether he has in fact retired or hasn't, and you've got Usyk holds everything else, putting aside, Daniel Dubois and that silly strap he picked up by blowing away Trevor Bryan the other day, So I just think it's certainly... Anthony Joshua will need to go away and think about it if he loses again, won't he?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think, as much as everyone loved the kind of comeback element of the Ruiz kind of 2 fights, he probably should have never lost the first one, really. But in terms of, he had to come back, he looked impressive, he made his point. And everyone, or certainly his fans, they all want him to make a similar point. But the difference is Usyk is a very, very, very different animal to what Anthony Ruiz was.
You wouldn't expect him to be so hot and cold. I mean, Ruiz, we knew Ruiz was capable of that beforehand, being erratic in form. And certainly it was pretty obvious what happened to him after he beat Joshua. His life changed, his bank balance changed radically, and his lifestyle. And he went with it, enjoyed it, ate, partied, and rode that wave, and then came back in, in no kind of position to, a bit like Buster Douglas with, when he beat Mike Tyson and then got banged out by Evander Holyfield in his next fight. And I think we already know Usyk is not that kind of animal, and he will come in shape and focused and confident, like you say. So it's a much taller order, yeah. I mean, I think you give Joshua a certain benefit of the doubt because he's proven he can return from adversity, a bounce back, and avenge a defeat. We know he's got that in him. But I agree with you that this is a much more uphill task for him. Having said all of that, I don't think it's impossible for him to win. I would not write him off and say he's got no chance whatsoever. And there is that added intrigue of, Usyk perhaps not having been in the best situation for anybody to be in between now and then. But I just think based on all boxing logic, Usyk should be able to outbox him again and stay out of trouble sufficiently well to retain his titles.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I was listening to Talk Sport yesterday, I think it was, and they were they had a couple of boxing guys on. I forget the names of the pundits who were on, but they basically were saying Anthony Joshua's only chance is to go and lean on him and attack him and do the things that everyone wanted him to do in the first fight. However, I don't think it's as easy as that necessarily.
Absolutely. I think you've just said it all. Anybody can say, "Oh, you've got to get hold of him. You've got to manhandle him. You've got to hit him on the break. You've got to use your elbows." But if it was that simple, everybody would have done it against Usyk. I mean, Chisora tried it, didn't he? I mean, Joshua is a better fighter than Chisora, but is he better at doing roughhousing than Chisora? Probably not. So yeah, we saw. Derek Chisora tried exactly that. The whole idea of hit him anywhere. Hit him on the hip, hit him on the shoulder, hit him, whatever. But it's like you just said, it's easier said than done. You're talking about a very slick guy who can punch himself a little bit as well. Who can punch his weight. He showed that last time with the 12th round. He had Joshua in a bit of bother. But the guy is super clever and he's got brilliant sense of range and distance. Got fantastic variety, ring generalship. So. You can't just expect to run at him and think, I'm just going to manhandle him and rough him up. You can implement it to a degree and try to make it happen as much as possible. But obviously, you're boxing a guy, a really clever, capable, good athlete who's going to try and stop you from doing all of that.
In one sentence, we'll say, rather than one word, do you think we see Tyson Fury versus the winner? He contradicted himself a little bit this week, didn't he, Tyson?
He always does. I mean, if Fury told me it was raining, I'd look outside, and I don't mean that disparagingly. I like him. I do like him, but I tell him to his face that my skepticism regarding any meteorological pronouncements that might pass forth from him. But God, I don't know. I think because saying you want $500 million sounds like pricing yourself out. I think if Joshua did win the rematch, I would be more confident. If Usyk wins, I'm not at all sure we'll see Fury versus Usyk. And by that, by the way, I don't mean that Fury is somehow wary of Usyk and doesn't think he could beat Usyk. I just think it's less likely. Fury, he hasn't vacated the belt, like I say, so he obviously at least in two minds about fighting again. But I do believe he could possibly stay retired, at least for the foreseeable future, like for the rest of certainly for the rest of 2022. If I had to, gun to the head, will Fury fight the winner? I'm going to say no.
Interesting.
Because I think the winner will be Usyk, and I'm not sure Fury's going to fight him.
Yeah, time will tell, I guess. But I tend to agree with you on that front. You mentioned Daniel Dubois. Speak to me about what's going on with him.
Well, he got an interim, regular WBA title, wasn't it?
Yes.
The WBA were probably the most egregious of the sanctioning bodies a while ago, years ago now. They, not content with the situation of there being four main sanctioning bodies all declaring different world champs at the same weight in most divisions, the WBA decided there wasn't enough world titles within their own sanctioning body in the same weight division. So what they thought is, if you've got a champion, it started whenever one of their champions won another one of the belts, in the unification, they decided that he was the super champion and they could have a regular, honest to goodness WBA champion underneath him. They also decided that interim champions were fair game. It used to be that term used to logically apply to when a champion was injured and they needed to keep the title moving and title activity moving and the sanctioning fees rolling in. And in the end, they just started indiscriminately having interim champions when there was nothing wrong with either the super champ or the regular champ. You know what I mean? I mean, you couldn't make it up.
No.
So
when you say it all, it sounds ridiculous, doesn't it?
It does a little, doesn't it? So Trevor Bryan has held the WBA regular title for 2 years. He's hardly ever defended it. I mean, I think he fought to remain Stavern for it. I think he either won it or defended it against him. When I start getting sketch on details, it's got to be pretty meaningless. Yeah. Trevor Bryan was so unknown it wasn't true. I mean, he wasn't even a household name in his own household. And he'd sat on that title for ages. I guess nobody wanted to fight him for it. He just wasn't a hot property. He was Don King. Don King was obviously towards the end of a legendary career now. It was one of his small amount of stake King still had in boxing and in the heavyweight division. Dubois fought him and annihilated him recently. I mean, Bryan was in terrible shape, showed nothing in the short amount of time he was in the ring. 4 rounds, I believe. For anybody to claim that Dubois is the champion of anything is ridiculous. And I like Daniel. He's a nice lad, and he is a good fighter. He's only lost the one to Joe Joyce. I think we can give him the benefit of the doubt with the injury he had, and he took the best. He took the best course of action for him, which was to exceed. But no. I mean, the whole idea that Dubois is any kind of gatekeeper, or he was saying, if these guys, Dylan White's got to come back through me now. No one has to go through him. He has to put himself in the mix. He knocked out a middling kind of, not even a fringe contender in an international heavyweight contest the other day. And we have to retain that kind of sanity, because you'll get, never mind fighters buying into it and sanctioning bodies creating this situation and promoters buying into it. What upsets me a little bit is when you get fans buying into it and saying, you people will say what they want, but he's still in the history books, he's still WBA heavyweight champion of the world. He's not. No, and people say, well, who are you? You're just some bloke sitting on a sofa in Plaistow, like your girlfriend's house, lording it like you're the Bible of boxing. Someone's got to fight for what's right. Someone's got to try and uphold some standards, and here I am.
Indeed. Do you know what struck me? I was reading about this. Is supposedly Dubois got paid something like $3.1 million for that fight, and at the time of whenever they made this offer for the the purse or whatever. It didn't even have a TV deal, so it wasn't even going to be initially screened or anything like that. I think that I think eventually it was on Don
BT
King's website,
Yeah.
also. Well, it was on BT Web.
It was on BT Sport because I watched it on my phone because I get that for free as part of the contract. I can't watch BT Sport on TV.
You can watch it on your phone,
but I can watch it on my phone, which is okay. You put it on the stand, like I've got you on the stand now, and it kind of works, But yeah, that surprised me because I didn't know what Dubois got paid. Actually, I didn't think about that side of it this time, but that's a lot of money for.
It is a lot of money, isn't it?
For what it was, and particularly the way I've just described it, and there was nobody there either. It was in like a high school, wasn't it, or something? And it was a very strange, surreal show, and a lot of people were picking up on that. And it was just a bit of a farce, the whole thing.
No surprise, mind. For $3 million, you'd go and fight, even if the title's meaningless and is.
You would.
$3 million, isn't it? At the end of the day,
it's which is unbelievable, really, when you consider that the most that Dylan White had ever earned before the Fury fight was said to be $300K. You know that, so
Jesus.
I mean,
that's coming from that's on the BBC website. That is in the little article about it. So I tend to put a little bit of stock in the figures.
Yeah.
But right, to finish us off there, mate, I want to talk a little bit about last night in particular. The man's name I always butcher, but Beterbiev knocked out Smith for the WBO title, and Yards won the world title in London as well. But let's talk about Beterbiev first and foremost.
Yeah, I thought his name was Beterbiev, they were saying a few fights ago, but last night they were saying Beterbiev. So I'm going to go with Beterbiev because that's what everybody was saying last night in the commentary. Yeah, you know what? He's a beast. I mean, he is an absolute wrecking ball. Kind of smart too, because Smith was almost like this blue collar, come forward, aggressive fighter, could punch, could take a punch. But Smith was coming forward being aggressive because that was perceived as his only chance. And Beterbiev was going backwards, walking him onto shots, drawing him into range, floating around a little bit, and then just walking him onto these counters, that bludgeoning right hand that put him over in the first round. They were like flash knockdowns because he's such a hard, brutal puncher that even though Smith is very durable and never been down before, it short-circuited him in some way where he had to touch down, but he got straight back up. So they were pretty quick knockdowns, where he just capitulated under the blunt force trauma of the shots, Smith. So essentially, I would say he walked through him, but in a way, he walked him onto this kind of destruction a little bit, the way he did it. He lured him in and let him come. Beterbiev is a fantastic fighter. Has got a lot going for him. He's no spring chicken, I mean, he's like 37, I believe.
Is that right?
He's not a spring chicken, but obviously the fight that everybody wants to see is the undisputed World Light Heavyweight Championship fight with Dimitri Bivol, which would be an absolute corker. And I think people with the boxing community will probably be split down the middle on that one, which is, as with all great fights, ideally great matchups. So they say Anthony Yarde is going to be next, apparently, for Beterbiev.
All right, okay. So that takes us in nicely, actually, into Anthony Yarde's fight. So he's in line for that world title shot in London. So that'll be a Beterbiev in London, that'll be, will it?
Yeah. But apparently so. I mean, Bob Arum said it was already nailed on before last night. Bob Arum said that Anthony Yarde was nailed on to fight the winner. They asked Beterbiev in the ring who he'd rather fight. Would you prefer the mandatory against Yarde, or do you prefer the undisputed title fight? And he said he prefers the undisputed title fight with Bivol. I think
that's natural, isn't it? To want the undisputed title fight. I think any fighter would want that.
Well, you say that, but it's not necessarily the case, is it? Because otherwise, Spence and Crawford would have fought ages ago. Sometimes they say no. Well, I've got to fight the mandatory because they only want it if they think they can win it and they're getting the best deal. If they're getting the lion's share, they don't necessarily want it if they think, hey, we could both just keep making money as it is and avoid each other, So they don't all have that kind of more sporting attitude, to be fair. But yeah, that's what Beterbiev said he would rather have. I mean, I think it's obviously the hottest fight in the light heavyweight division. And but you know what? It looks like Joshua Buatsi is next for Bivol, and that Yarde is next for Beterbiev. So maybe they could fight after that, assuming they beat both of the Brits, which I think you'd have to favour both of them to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say that Bivol versus Beterbiev fight is mouthwatering to me. I'd really like to see that fight.
Yes,
I really would.
Yeah.
So hopefully, as much as I support, I like to support the British fighters. I kind of want Beterbiev to win, and Bivol to win, so that we can see them fight each other. Because I tend to think if they lose, or one of them loses, they'll go their separate ways.
Imagine if Yard won and Wortsey both won. I mean, that would be quite a situation. And obviously there would be a massive all British clash ready to be made there, but I don't see it.
No, I mean, me either, but it's certainly going to be interesting. Any fights next weekend or coming up, which you're looking forward to, Ben?
What have we got? We've got. I'm trying to think because there is a quiet few weeks.
What are we now? 19th, 25th.
You sometimes get this in the summer where things get a little quiet, end of July and August. But I say July 2nd was supposed to be the Hatton thing and Hughie Fury versus Michael Hunter. Not that I was usually anticipating that. What else we got? Joe
Joyce fighting
Christian Hammer. Yeah, he's fighting Christian Hammer. I believe that might be July 2nd as well. Or thereabouts. I think Joshua Usyk, to be honest with you, is the most intriguing thing imminently. Because Golovkin Canelo 3 is September 17th, with Joshua Usyk being August 20th. I think that probably is the more intriguing, biggest thing coming up right now.
So I just had a quick look on the BBC schedule, and they got July. They've got 2nd. They got Joe Joyce, Christian Hammer, and Jason Cunningham versus Zolani's Teti or Teti.
Yeah, that's a good fight. That's a good fight.
And then on the 9th, we got Chisora versus Pulev in the heavyweight division.
Yeah.
And Ryan Garcia also fighting on the 16th versus Javier
Fortuna, yeah.
Francisco Torres versus Hamza Shariz as well on the same day.
Yeah, it's always good to see Ryan Garcia in action because he obviously has been out a while, and I mean he's got major star potential. Garcia, I mean he's already something of a star as it stands. I think there's something very watchable about Ryan Garcia and compelling about him. So I want to see how he returns, and how he fits into that mix of what is probably boxing's hottest division, the lightweight division.
Ben, have they announced the date for Golovkin and Alvarez?
Yeah, it's September 17th.
That'd be a good one, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Canelo losing last time quite clearly to Bivol, I think it's put some more intrigue on I think it's even things up in people's minds a little bit, in terms of he would have been a huge favourite against a faded older Golovkin without that loss, but the fact that he was kind of mastered by Bivol to a great extent, I think that's probably might have made some people a little bit more optimistic about Golovkin's chances, although he doesn't fight anything like Bivol.
No.
But I think it is more intriguing now that Canelo's coming off a loss, to be fair. I think it does give it some extra juice, to be fair.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, the fight which you didn't mention for the start of August is the one that you're waiting for the most, you're the most excited about, and that's because on August 6th, you've got Amanda Serrano is fighting to be decided, and of course, Jake Paul making his return to the ring to fight TBC. So
TBC gets a lot of work. Well, Amanda Serrano, like I say, she's a good fighter for sure.
Yes.
But I mean, it was a great fight with Katie Taylor not so long ago. I saw the Serrano sisters doing some kind of, or one of them doing some kind of cool thing on Instagram as well, where you ever see people go backwards on a treadmill and shadowbox. The shadowbox and keep throwing punches without falling off the damn treadmill. That looked quite impressive, although I wouldn't recommend people try it at home. No. But Jake Paul, he's a
guy.
I've seen it. Well, I think what we've proved is that anyone can walk into boxing at quite a high level sometimes, with a bit of social media following. We've seen that happen. I mean, I see the banter go back and forth between him and Eddie Hearn. But I suspect we'll be stuck with him for a while as a player in the business, not on the outside, of the ring, rather than as a fighter, to be fair. I think with if he promotes fighters like he does with Amanda Serrano and such, I think that's how he may kind of carve his niche in the game, and he might be around for a while.
Yeah, I mean, in being completely fair to him, one thing he knows and is good at is promotion and or self-promotion and internet and following trends and things like this. Like he is of an age and an era who understands that probably more than someone like myself or you, just simply because they've kind of grown up with it, and obviously he's made a big name for himself through that medium of promotion. And to decided what mark he leaves on boxing as a sport in terms of in the ring, because until he goes and fights some actual boxers, it's very difficult to be excited by his upcoming fights. I heard rumors that I spoke to someone who's involved with a social media marketing company who said that they'd heard that he was going to be fighting KSI at the end of the year, which, I mean, again, I've got zero interest in seeing that. Whereas if he wants to be taken seriously in boxing, he should fight boxers and work his way up that way, and then he might gain some respect from people like yourself and other boxing purists. But when you're fighting YouTubers and MMA fighters, ultimately it's not going to fly, I don't think.
Not with me.
There we go. Right, Ben, as always, it's an absolute pleasure to have you join me, and I appreciate you stayed a bit longer as well with Danny stuck on his way back from Poland. No sign of the airports improving.
No worries.
In the UK, but as always, appreciate it. Guys, please do like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And we'll be back next Sunday for another fight show, live 8 o'clock on YouTube. Cheers.
Nice one, too.